Sweet friends, how do you do today? And how do you woo today? And how do you woo you today? Welcome to How to Woo, a podcast on love and making love so we can make sure we're making lives we love. I am your host, Luna Robbie. I am a multi-artist and creative guide obsessed with learning about life, especially from other humans direct, because we all have our own unique perspective and wisdom. So here we are again for some deep listening and a little vacrophilia so we can stay excited about life and co-create a world where taking care of each other is the norm. Let's dive in. Our guest today is a 39-year-old lesbian, a monogamously married white trans woman who has been with her partner for 4 years. She is into dominance and submission on the right side of the slash, which means submissive, impact play, hypnosis, and role play. A technology project manager who is into tabletop role-playing games, game design, writing, and romance novels. Originally from Massachusetts, she now lives in Montreal. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. I would love for you to start off by just give us a little sense of you. Let us know, in general, in life, what do you love? What brings you joy? What, might you say, makes you go, woo?
Woo. So my wife recently asked me to do a meme with her one afternoon where it was like I'm sure some people have seen it because it went around. It was like this 3x3 grid where you did one for your partner, and each square is a different picture based on a different prompt. She did one for me, I did one for myself, and then we compared our results. And there's a hobby prompt. And she put romance for mine. It was just a picture of two girls kissing. And I felt really seen by that. I really love romance across experiences of that, in my personal life, but also in the media I consume, in stories I tell in different formats. So that's, I would, if I had to give one answer, I think that might be it. Romance inclusive of sex.
I love that so much, and I am so glad that you brought this up all on your own. And also, I've been so excited since I read that you're into romance novels because I have been kind of on an obsessively deep dive for maybe solidly a year unpacking what romance is. And I'm not sure I understand what is romantic. I mean, I know it can be contextual. I know it has to do with wooing, but I would love to hear your thoughts on romance and what you love about it and how you love it. Just a little deep dive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's a great question. Actually, I have a friend who's going through a complicated situation with an ace partner who wants to stay romantically together, but stop having a sexual relationship, but is still they're poly and is still potentially interested in sex with other people, which has been complicated for him to navigate. And we've been discussing it. I've been just trying to understand and support him through it. And we talked about this in particular, right? What does a romantic relationship without sex look like? And I think that there's a ton of answers to that. We are both people who, me and my friend, who link those two things together closely. So it's something that's been a real challenge for him to imagine what that relationship's going to look like in the future. But they also are clearly different, right? So, gosh, okay, to start with a romance novel, I love romance novels. Romance novels are so formulaic, right? They have this particular and predictable rhythm to them. And even when the book is doing something new, it's probably going to hit some of those milestones, right? There's two people meet and there's some sort of initial resistance. There is a reason why they shouldn't be together, even though there's almost always either an instant or very fast attraction where they're notice each other and feel drawn. And then they get closer and closer. And then they reach a point where they think we can do it. We can be together. And then something really big happens that gets in the way and drives them apart. And then they have one final big challenge they have to overcome, which could be a misunderstanding, or it could be a fight, or it could be something external that comes up that they have to make the decision to put in the energy and time to overcome. One of them has to move or has to quit her job or, whatever it is. I say she because I only read lesbian romance novels.
I love that.
So yeah, for me, it's always she's, but boys are great too. So what does that mean, right? I guess what it is making me think about right now, that formula, which is it's just a storytelling formula, right? But I think it's ultimately about choosing each other, right?
Mm.
And I think that that's a
Mm.
lot of what romance is. It's about like feeling chosen by the other person, which is a way of saying feeling honored or admired or cared for by the other person. But then, and obviously, it's a very specific form of all of those things. Like, because you can be cared for by a friend, you could be admired by a colleague. So it's a little hard to parse out the details there, but I feel like, okay, that's my starting point.
I think that is really insightful. And for me, you have unlocked a piece, the choosing, because I've been like, okay, it's relational. Okay, they're doing something for a specific person. But I think what I'm hearing, and when I like, compare it against all the just infinity notes of sex and relationship that I've been deep diving for the last decade, I know so many of us have the desire to be special to another person. And so maybe romance is a choosing, like I choose you to be special, and the gestures that go along with that are uniquely selected to let that other person know they are special in that person's life. As I noodle on into it, I don't know, something about specialness and choosing. The choosing piece feels important.
I think that's true. I think for my friend and I, who I was talking about, whose partner sort of wants to continue their relationship without sex, that is like it's something that like is very challenging for him, and that I also find very challenging. Like as I was talking about it, I was like, oh gosh, like I would really struggle with that. I want to be careful as I say this because I have a lot of friends who are ace or who have
Mhm.
some relationship with aceness,
Yeah.
and that's I fully believe that that is a completely valid and wonderful way of being or way to have a relationship. But it would be really hard for me, and it's also very hard to for my friend, and I think it's because we personally lose a sense of specialness in that, or we tend to, right? And I think that you can overcome that. Like, I mean, I think that because I think the flip side of this can sort of be like codependence, right? Or maybe not codependence, but like a
Enmeshment.
yes, something that I struggle with a lot is a need for external validation.
Mm.
It's something that my wife teases me about all the time. You know, I'll sort of be like, it could be anything, right? I'll be like, do you think this outfit is good? And like if her answer isn't enthusiastic enough, I'm like, but really though, really, is it okay? Feeling special on my own terms, I guess, is something that I struggle with a little bit. And I think
Mhm.
like putting that need onto another person is something that is necessary and also wonderful.
Yes.
Can also be a trap, right? It's something that can get you into trouble.
I'm so glad that you identified it as necessary because I am an individual who, like you, sex is very important to me. If I understood what romance was and I was in a relationship and sex wasn't a part of it, I would be very sad. I would not be able to feel as deeply connected as I want. However, I am the person that, unlike you, I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter what other people think about my work or my thing. All that matters is if I'm doing my work and is it satisfying me? And that puts me into this like hyper self-sufficient, almost unable to receive, like really needing to deeply receive. Like for years, people are like, I love your podcast. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, well, but it's not as good as it's what's inside my head. Or like, well, it's only reaching so many, or like my brain. So, and so there's a balance there. And I'm so glad that you kind of pointed out that it's, it really is about a back and forth. Okay. So this discussion of romance leads me to one of my other first questions for you, which is how do you like to be wooed by others? Like, how do you like to receive love? How do you like to receive attention?
So, all right. Well, this question it's loaded or complicated for me because of my gender, right? Being a trans woman, and of course, like this probably goes without saying, but still, I'm sure that every trans woman and trans person has a different experience of this kind of thing. But I definitely have a like I really want to be like to be wooed very actively, right? Like I want to be the one who is like la, 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 and then like have somebody come to me and be like, wow, you're so amazing and feminine and beautiful. I find that like very, very gender affirming. I respond well to like to words, like to, you know, to words of affirmation and like the love language parlance.
Yeah.
I really like to be like verbally reassured. I had a conversation with my wife recently where like I felt unfeminine in a specific outfit and I shared that with her. And she started a conversation with me about like what does it mean to be like perceived as feminine? Like, you know, like it was this very thoughtful thing about you know, her experience, like walking around the world and how, you know, she just sort of assumes that she's under scrutiny all the time. And like, she wasn't trying to be harsh with me, but there was sort of a suggestion of like, it's tough to be perceived and people aren't going to like you. And you kind of have to adapt to that to some degree. And I was kind of like, everything you're saying sounds very smart and valid. And this is really not what I want you to be saying right now. And later on, thinking about it, I said outright to her, this is, you know, like we had forgotten all about this conversation, or she had. And I was like, by the way, sometimes when I say something like that, I want you to say, oh my gosh, you look so good. And that's all you have to say.
Mm.
um, so,
Mm.
you know, I really like that kind of thing. The way that my wife wooed me was she is like incredibly thoughtful. She is somebody who will like plan a whole trip for you, right? Will be like, we're going away this weekend. Like, don't make any plans. And then like, it's, you know, everything is a surprise and like things are personalized. One time we just moved in together because she needed me to take a whole day off of work. So she told me we were traveling and she sort of dropped hints about an itinerary, but kept it a secret. And I thought I had big parts of it figured out. But actually, it was all an excuse because she was flying a friend of mine out to see me. And then I just hung out with my friend all day. She's the only partner I've had who has executed plans on that scale or gotten to that level of thoughtfulness. And it's like very her, you know, she's
Yeah.
very dramatic and like big, likes big gestures. And I love that.
Is that romantic? That's romantic, right? Is that romantic to
Oh,
you?
it's definitely
Okay.
romantic. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
it's very romantic.
Because also it's like very specific. It's specific to you. It's done for you, for your pleasure. And I mean, in the case
Yeah.
where she flew up your friend, it's like, well, what did she hang out with you too? I mean, that's such a sweet gesture.
It was both, right? So like
Okay.
we had like what we did that day was it was like we had brunch with like a few friends of hers, and then like me and my friend went like shopping for a few hours, and then like we had dinner with my wife, right? So it was yeah, it was great. And
Yeah.
you're right. It's like it was very personal. That's exactly what makes it such a big thing. This was also I had moved, right? I had moved to Montreal, so I was sort of cut off from all of my friends, you know, shortly before this. And yeah, it was just really thoughtful. And she keeps up that pattern, like not always at that scale, right? It can be much smaller, but she's very thoughtful and she's customizing things to me, right? She's thinking about what I like. And yeah, it's very intoxicating, I think.
Wow. Yeah. I too am a sucker for thoughtfulness and that specificity of like, wow, that person really sees me. I would love to just hear briefly if there's an evolution over the 4 years that you've been together of that wooing. Like it's an ongoing process to continue to
Yeah.
woo one another, right? Like, are there any patterns you notice? I don't know if
Yeah.
this is a good question, but I'm curious about it.
No, it is a good question. There is and there isn't. I think that there is like a real constancy that I always have the sense that she's doing that or something like something like that might happen. You know, I mean, like whatever, buying a plane ticket for my friend is like a pretty big thing. Like that's not going to happen every week,
Yeah.
but she does do a lot. I think one of the biggest things that's changed has actually been our openness with each other about what we want. Like particularly her to me, right? Because
Okay.
she obviously very good at romantic gestures. And I think that like I didn't realize when we were first dating how on she felt around me all the time. You know, like she really liked me, but she was always in this mode of trying to impress me. And she was very good at doing that. So I think it took me a long time to pick up on how much that was happening. And I think over time, we have a lot of days that are like where she'll be like, I've planned out our 8-hour day. It's like all things that I want to do. And then we're going to a store I think you'll like at the end, right? Like she includes me, but she will be very much like, here's what I wanted to do today, and I'm excited to include you in it. And just to sort of like ask for my participation in those things.
Mm.
I feel like you could look at that as that selfishness comes in more, or that, I don't know, like the something like that, but it doesn't feel like that, right? It feels like a more full sharing of yourself, I guess.
Yes. Oh, yes. You are so good at parsing those little nuances because
Oh,
I think
thank
I
you.
grew up in a society where, yes, I often got the message that to prioritize oneself is selfish, but like that is necessary to fill the cup. How does it feel to you to just be invited into that? Looking at your face, because I can see it, everyone else out there, you could be jealous. I'm trying to figure out jealousy. I saw a gentle smile. And so,
Yeah.
whereas I know for some people, maybe in that connection, they wouldn't necessarily feel the same way about that. So it sounds like being included in her initiations is good for you.
It has two sides, right? Because she loves to craft, right? That's like
Mm.
her biggest thing. And that means like it's like a lot of shopping for supplies. She loves to go thrifting and find things that she can use in projects. And she does a lot of different kinds of crafts. She's very moves from subject to subject. So very often we'll be on these sort of like marathon like shopping days, thrifting days, and it can just be exhausting, right? Like last night actually, she's doing to like redecorating in our kitchen for Christmas.
Ooh,
She wants it to be like maxi festive, and we were out at 9 p.m. going to thrift stores, and it was snowing, and I was like, I want to go home. Right. So day to day, like it's work, it's energy. It's like there are a lot of moments of just being like, okay, I'm gonna be patient through this situation. I know that it's important to her. But on the other hand, yeah, it's like if she went to elaborate lengths to do those things on her own without including me, or just didn't do them, and like the was sort of whatever, like leaving those things aside to make space for me. Well, I guess to put it in the terms you've been using, it's she can be somebody who's hard to make feel special because she
mm.
tends to be very oriented around others, right? Like she tends to be like, she always jokes about she loves giving gifts, and she really does not care about receiving gifts, right? Like she's kind of like sometimes mortified by it. Like, oh gosh, like you're looking at me while I open this thing that you got me. This is the worst. This is the worst feeling.
Yeah.
She can be hard to romance in that way.
Mm.
So having even though it is like real work, and that there are days where I'm kind of like, oh gosh, like I'm just tired right now. I don't want to be doing this. It is still just like it feels basic to the relationship that it's one of the best ways I have to make her feel special,
Yeah.
is to participate in the things that she asks for and that she's excited for.
Wow. I love that. Okay, you mentioned that also she has been opening up to you more about her wants, desires, needs. I can't remember exactly how you languaged it, but what did you do to invite that?
Hmm. I definitely asked, right? Like I think I definitely would have moments where I was just like, what do you want to do? Like, and I think that was important to do, but it wasn't the most important thing. I think that my wife, who I love so dearly, is like, she's very capable of just being like, oh, but you don't really want to know. She's very capable of sort of downplaying those kinds of like explicit
Mhm.
offers of support, and just sort of being
Mm.
like, like, that's very polite of you to say. So it really was about enthusiasm and follow through, right? It's like about actually being like, yeah, sure, let's do that. Like, yeah, you want to go to a thrift store, like let's go. Yeah, and finding ways to sort of engage in that experience. I always go to books, right? Like when we go to the thrift store, I go over to the book aisle, and like I haven't bought a lot of books, and now I'm kind of like on a hiatus where I'm like, it has to really meet a high bar because I have too many right now. Like room is overflowing. Um, but it's like my way of kind of like okay, like I like this is something that I can get really into at the thrift store. And like I'm usually happy to spend, like 20 minutes or half an hour going through every book and weighing each one's merit. Um, to answer your original question, it's like this. like leaning in and being willing to participate in that, which like sometimes is work and requires energy and like creativity to some degree, but
Oh my gosh.
that's been
Yes.
really positive.
That's exactly what my next wonder was about, because as I was hearing you talk, I can't help but wonder if your ability to accept those invitations and receive the gifts and surprises from her is an invitation for opening up and closeness. It sounds like it's taken place over the course of years, but do you think that's at play there? Like, I know that's kind of an esoteric question, but like, do you think that I observe a comfort in receiving the way you tell stories too. So I don't know if that's true for you, but do you think that your like willingness to receive from her is part of that opening up?
I think it is like it's harder for me to parse out actually because she's done things for me that I just like the story I told about my like her flying my friend up. Yeah, I don't know how to talk about that almost, right? It's just sort of like it was so sweet and so thoughtful and so unexpected that I guess that it's like I can't help but feel deeply grateful about those
Mm,
things. And I think that like one thing that's been really important in just how great this relationship has been, and like so we got married this year, and I'm somebody who for a very long time I've been very reluctant about marriage. My parents are divorced, that's probably part of it, and
mm,
well, I don't know, and I just had never been in a relationship where I felt really excited about like yeah, like I want to definitely like bind myself in a way that would be kind of hard to undo to this person. But there was just like a consistency over time of her doing these things, like whether they were big or small, that made me feel caring a lot about what groceries she gets, like being like, sometimes she'll just be like, I'm so sorry they didn't have this brand of things that you liked. So I got this other brand. And I'll be like, it's fine. It's, but it's like the fact that she's like big or small, she is like very invested in giving this level of attention and care to me
mm.
that is um I mean we were talking at the beginning about sort of like specialness and feeling chosen. Like it makes me feel very chosen, it makes me feel very special, and it fills some of the need I have for validation.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you always monogamous?
That's a so yes, I basically have been my whole life. I would describe myself as a serial monogamist. I have had like a handful of relationships, and they all lasted years. And it's not really a way of approaching relationships I recommend. Like even as I practice it, I tend to like early in a romance, I tend to be very all or nothing. Like this is something that like, the last time I was sort of on the dating scene, I was just petrified. So I would tell people like I tend to kind of signal that I'm all in very quickly, but like
Mm,
I'm want to keep it casual right now. So anyway, so I've always been in these sort of like most of my life has been in longer term serious relationships that were always monogamous. And at the end of my last relationship, we as a couple went through a phase where we were talking about polyamory. And in retrospect, it was as a way of we were trying to paper over the cracks in our relationship, right? I
mm.
think there was a little bit of a sense of like neither of our needs are being met right now. Maybe somebody else could meet some of these needs and then the relationship would still work, which is not, to be clear, is not my opinion of what polyamory is. That was just where we were at as a couple.
And it is a common pattern in people who are exploring it or trying it out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely seen other friends of mine go through a similar place
Yeah.
where you're kind of like aware they've been on the rocks and they're like, we're opening up our relationship. And you're like, I wonder if you're doing this for the right reasons.
Well,
So after that, after we broke up, I was very down to explore polyamory, and it sort of didn't. Basically, I got into another long relationship very quickly, relatively
mm.
speaking. So just stayed true to form, but hopefully with my eyes a little more open. And fortunately, that was my wife, and that's turned out very well. So I've always been monogamous. Like I went through a period of like intense curiosity. Oh, it actually was also around, if you're checking your calendars, it was around the start of the lockdowns at the start of COVID-19. So it was like the dating scene wasn't super happening in like March 2020.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing these details about your connection. Truly, when I hear people who are obviously deeply in love with their partners and the partners are supportive, it really does inspire me. And I think it's important to highlight these foundations. So I would love to know, how do you love yourself? How do you woo you?
So I think my answer to this is very connected to gender, because I think that up until I transitioned, which was a while ago now, I started transitioning, I would probably say in 2016. And so 8 years ago, as of now. And it was at the time, a pretty radical act of honesty and self-care for me that I can remember before that point having this deep sense around gender, but also around a lot of things, and especially around sex and romance, having this deep sense of constraint that like there were certain things that weren't options for me. In particular, I was in a relationship at that point that was like had been it had ups and downs, and definitely had a lot of ups too. But that at that time, at the time that I was deciding to transition, like I wasn't fully happy with, and making the decision to do this thing that was for me and that bucked obviously like expectations. I didn't face a lot of headwinds. It's, there weren't a lot of like transphobic people in my life, including my family, fortunately. So it was really like, it was easy going as things go, right? Like which I'm very thankful for, but it's still just like, there's an innate sort of like, the default is not transitioning.
Right.
So
Right.
like it requires like, you have to say something that you want very honestly, and then you have to kind of insist on it over and over again. And I think that marked a huge change for me in ways that went beyond gender, right? Like I think that living as the right gender, as a gender that felt authentic, it has all sorts of like wonderful knock-on effects, right? Like you feel better in all sorts of ways. But I think that there's a fundamental way in which just like insisting on something that I wanted was really important. The fact that there was anything that I sort of fought for was really important. And yeah, so I think like in the wake of that, I got a lot better at communicating, particularly with intimate partners. Like, although I think with, my friends in general, like I think I'm capable of being much more sort of emotionally present with my friends than I was before that point. So that's a big part of it, is just sort of like being open, communicative about what you need, including being willing to take on conflict. I'm somebody who needs time alone and like time, kind of idle time. That's important to me. And if I don't get over time, like, can be deleterious for me. And my wife, we have a very good balance with this, I think, but she is somebody who can be very like, go, go, go. Like she always wants to be active. She wants to have a project. We've gotten very good at her sort of like including me in some things, and also having periods where like she'll be off for 4 hours sewing or whatever, and I'm like, great, I'm by myself. I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yes.
So that's an important thing for me, is like finding space for that, finding space to be by myself.
Yeah. I'd love to hear little specifics of how you use that solo time. I'm going to guess reading, writing. I know playing games is with people, but it's sort of alone, it's sort of together. But like, what are the ways that you romance yourself during that time alone?
Yes, those things. The two things I've been reading a lot, like this year, I feel like are romance novels and old science fiction.
Yes,
Like,
that's my favorite. I
please, like,
love
don't.
Ursula K. Le Guin, like, and Robert Heinlein. Like, they're my. I
Well,
love her. Classic sci-fi is my
yeah.
top favorite.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Le Guin. Yeah. Le Guin. Tombs of Atuan is a very important book for me. And I think it's like, it feels very tied to gender for me. Like, I guess I'll just say that, like, and to the way I think about womanhood as a trans woman. Anyway, yeah, Ursula K. Le Guin is really wonderful. I do write. I have my own projects. I mean, like I've some of the first friends of my own I made in Montreal is like a little writer circle that meets up every month, and they're all just really wonderful. And that's been really positive. It's interesting too because I think sometimes time with a different group can be the same as time alone, if you know what I mean. Like going off to see my writers group is like, it's not the same as sitting and reading or sitting and writing, but it is like restorative in a way that being with like a really close friend or an intimate partner isn't necessarily. And yeah, no, I play a lot of games, which is interesting because I mean I play like I've been playing Dragon Age, for instance, which is like a big video game recently, but I also play a lot of TTRPGs, Dungeons and Dragons, and similar for the uninitiated who might be listening, which is actually like it's a big way that I like express and think about romance and gender for that matter has been through those games. And like, you know, if you have the right people to play with, it can be like really, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten a lot out of that and learned a lot doing that. Yeah, so those are some of the things I do with that time.
I love that. Okay, transitioning toward the more explicitly erotic parts, I'd love to hear, when do you feel most connected to other humans, and what do you actually need in order for a connection to become physically intimate?
So I haven't had a great many partners in my life. And this is like tied to the pattern I talked about. Like I tend to be in long monogamous relationships, which again, I don't recommend. It's not my favorite way of being. It's just the way that I have operated. So I haven't had a great number of partners. It's interesting because it's very easy. Like I get crushes a lot. I am super attracted to people. Like it's very something that is wonderful about my wife is that I can go to her and just be like, oh my God, like that character in that movie is so hot. Like, you know, I can just say that and express that, and it's all copacetic. So I have those kinds of feelings a lot. I get crushes a lot, but like I haven't taken the transition from not being intimate to being intimate that often. And like honestly, I think I'm terrible at it. Like I think I'm really bad at it.
Why?
My friend and I were joking. Like my wife just told a story of like a romantic adventure from her past where she, you know, like was making out with somebody at a party, and we were just like, my friend and I were both just kind of like, I don't think this is real. I don't think this has ever happened. I'm pretty sure people don't hook up at parties because I have never been able to make it happen. Um, Joking, obviously, because I know that it does happen.
I know, but also I was 27 when I picked up my first person at a party, and I remember like taking them back to my house, but we were driving separate cars, and I was like, it's happening. I'm a real grown up. Is this a good idea? I don't know. Yeah. But it was like a friend of a friend. It was like a vouched for, but I at the party,
Yeah,
never.
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it is like whenever I'm in that space, I am like kind of terrified. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. It's so
So
funny.
like so I think that there's a difference between like what it takes and what it takes for it to be really successful.
Good distinction.
The difference that I see in relationships that have started with just sort of immediate sexual chemistry and relationships that have taken a lot longer to build to that have to do with like expectations, I think. And going in with more of a sense of openness to seeing what this new experience will be like versus sort of going in with like a very clear picture of what was going to happen and what it was going to be like, because it like never was. And like there's a particular experience I'm thinking of where like I think I had very specific, I was young. I feel like I sort of like projected what I wanted onto my partner, and I think that she shaped herself around that. Was kind of like, oh, like I'll give you what you want, and
Mm.
it both like didn't like. I think it was clear that something was off, and like that, I think led to more and more problems down the line. So I mean, I guess I would say communication clearly, like to say what it is that you want for them to be able to say what they want or what they don't want. And then also a willingness to see what the shape of it is going to be and to like, hopefully it's something that really works for you. It's great. And maybe it's not. And then like, being willing to like back away if that's the case, which I haven't always done. Like, I've had relationships that I think sort of started like there was sort of a mismatch in what we were looking for and we just stuck with it.
Yeah.
And it didn't actually like that never fundamentally fixed itself.
Yeah. Is there, as I hear you talk about communication and expectations, I also wonder if there is a piece that's important that's connected to feeling safe. Like if we're communicating, is safety
Mhm.
a factor for you? Or if it is, how is it?
Obviously you have to feel safe to in order to feel open. I think I've been very lucky in that. I mean, and part of it comes from mostly having partners who I'm sort of starting to get involved with. I've generally felt very safe at the start. So it's usually the safety is really there. But it's interesting is when I think I haven't always felt safe during sex, but I mean something very specific by that, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean that I have felt like I'm taking a big emotional risk. That is only possible if you're not taking any physical risk, right? Like, does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah.
That it's only because I felt like absolutely no sense of danger in any other sense that I'm like, yeah, I've been able at times to be very emotionally open and vulnerable. And when I say emotional, like sex isn't always about like you don't always know the person's whole life story, right? But it's
Yeah.
still about like connecting very openly and being very like available and
Yeah.
like giving what they want and getting what you want.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, moving squarely into sexy topics. If you had to rate yourself on a sexual shameometer, with 10 being the most full of sexual shame and 0 being happy and free, where do you fall today, and when, if ever, does it squiggle around on a shamo coaster?
Ooh, I'm at my low point for my life, probably.
Fuck yeah.
I'm at like a 4 or a 3. I think that I surprise myself with this sometimes because I think of myself as being very low shame, and then okay, sorry. This is like gender story that I feel like illustrates this topic. So after I knew I was trans, but before I transitioned, I was having a conversation with like a woman friend of mine who had no idea I was thinking about gender things. Where like I can't remember what I said. We were talking about a group of high school students. We're talking about the gender dynamics, about like the way that like the boys and girls in this class seem to interact in a very particular way. And I just hit something that was sort of like scornful of the gender binary, and she was like, "It's really interesting to hear you say that." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "I don't know. Like you dress like a guy dresses. Like I don't mean that as an insult, but that's just like that's what I observe." And I was kind of shook because I was like, that's not how I feel inside.
Mm,
But actually sort of the like knowing that I had some sort of gender thing going on was like I was actually really putting myself in a box in terms of my presentation because I just I guess I felt like that would be glaringly obvious to everybody around me. So I stayed with like very safe choices. And I was like a real moment of like, whoa, like, oh, I look different from the outside.
yeah.
And I think I can be that way with sex too, where like I've sort of had moments where people were like, "Oh, like I'm into that kind of thing too," and people would be like, "Really? Huh?
Yeah.
I didn't know."
Yeah.
And I'll sort of be like, "Oh, but I thought, isn't it obvious from what's inside my head that nobody else?"
Yes.
That's why I give myself sort of like this. I bump myself up a few points for that because like I sort of come to recognize that I have some level of like, just like privacy or shyness, which isn't necessarily something that's ever tied to shame. But I think for me, it's kind of unconscious. And that makes me say like, yeah, that probably has some connection to shame, right? Like if you're unconsciously sort of like avoiding certain topics with certain people, it feels like there's something there where I'm like a little shy about it. Honestly, like something that's coming up for me as I'm talking about it is that one of the sort of like most pervasive slanders about trans people is like that they're sexual predators. The reason people transition is obviously so that they can quote unquote go into bathrooms and assault people,
It's
right? Which is
insane.
like
Yeah.
it's insane on like 12 different levels, but that is something actually that I think does have a profound effect on me. And I can be very nervous about being too forwardly sexual out of a fear that it'll come off a certain way. Sometimes like I have been in situations where people completely legitimately like, we're kind of like, I don't know, like something risque or sexy would come up and people would kind of signal discomfort, right? And the conversation backs off of it, which is completely fine.
Yeah.
And like that kind of thing can hit me really hard, right? I can sort of go into kind of a panic spiral and be like, I was being creepy, I was being predatory,
Uh-huh.
like everybody thinks that I'm like a man who's like creeping on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a part of it too, that like I have a little bit of a self-censorship out of like sort of this ongoing fear. I think there's a term for this called stereotype threat that I heard once, which is like the idea that if you're part of a marginalized group and there's a stereotype about you, you feel this awareness of the stereotype that you're trying to avoid. Like you're kind of trying to be like, I'm going to be the opposite of that stereotype. It's not shame that I consciously own. I'm not like, yeah, I feel a certain level of shame because it's wrong, but I think that it does sort of contribute to this little like bubble of like, I should just be a little more private and like a little more reserved and like not share quite as openly with the people around me. Which is one reason why like I was really keen to go on the show because I love intentional spaces for it, right? Like I love the idea of like, let's have a very intentional space to just really talk about it.
I'm so grateful that I love hearing all of that, and I love how fucking thoughtful you are. And also, I want to share my experience. First of all, thank you for teaching me the concept of stereotype threat. I actually
Yeah.
didn't know about that. And, I connect, obviously, I have a completely different experience. I am a cis woman, and I am normatively considered attractive by people. I got that old Hollywood look, but I really relate to the fear of being creepy because I do not trust my own, or rather, because I'm still practicing learning to trust my own sense of the social signals that are happening in the room. And because I have had many experiences where I didn't understand where other people's shame triggers were. And I want to just
Yeah.
like highlight and circle back to what you said about secrecy and privacy. Well, you mentioned privacy. I'm adding the layer of secrecy because I think it's actually totally valid to have these spaces where it's like, of course, I don't want to like on purpose trigger other people, but also sometimes I just don't want someone else's blah foisted upon me. And so while I am very, very, very open when I have met someone and I'm talking to them one on one and they want to know, the details of what it's like to be a sex worker in all the ways that I am, I love sharing that. I'm still like wrapping my brain around the concept that I'm part of a technically marginalized group, even though I'm like,
Yeah.
but I'm the most privileged girl in the world. I just don't understand people and that can be difficult, and so I think there's a huge value that is maybe parallel to shame, but like privacy is valuable because what I notice is that in private spaces, we are safe to explore parts of ourselves that we can't necessarily explore outside of that little bubble, and it's contingencies and it's almost like we are ever evolving beings, hopefully. I think hopefully. I like evolutions. I like learning. I like growing. Those are my values. But I know that's not everyone, but, you know, I think that it's a whole layered, nuanced concept, and I definitely have places where when I know, you know, when I know that I'm in a group of women who hate men, sometimes I'm afraid to talk about how much I love sucking cock, but then I still will, you know, or when I'm in a group of wives who hate sex workers, I'm like, oh, now might not be the time to mention that I've, you know, been with a husband or two in my day. You know, and also I know that in the moments where I don't stop to think, sometimes I really do put myself out there in a way that if I was more thoughtful, I probably wouldn't. But oftentimes I end up accidentally teaching, you know, sometimes there's discomfort, but I end up teaching people or kind of like sharing these parts of myself. And so it's a whole layered thing and totally related to how well fed or rested or resourced
Oh
I
my
am in a
gosh.
given moment. So I love that you brought that up.
That is like it's so fascinating. I think it's something I think about more and more because I'm just in such a stable, like I'm married now, like things feel very stable. Become so aware of like these rhythms of like the rhythms of the body, right? Of just being like, well, like we have errands to run and we haven't eaten dinner, so we're gonna have
Yes.
a fight. That's just how it goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's this like, this it's completely independent of anything that's actually happening. It's just like, well, like we're doing something complicated and we haven't eaten in 6 hours. So that's how like it's just gonna happen.
Yes.
Well, I guess I was just thinking that there's a way in which if you're having like good sex, right? If you're or great sex even, like that's kind of like the ultimate intentional space for exploring that kind of thing.
My
Like it
favorite.
is. Yeah. So something that I've done with my wife is like I'm submissive in a relationship, and sometimes I've asked to be called slurs, right? Like,
Mhm.
which is like isn't something that I always want, but like it can feel really good and liberating in the moment. And that's something that like we talked about at certain points, like sort of afterwards. She would sort of be like, look, can we talk like what's going on there? Because like, I feel like how it works for you, but like it's a little tough for me. And like the best I've been able to explain it, which feels very related to submission in general, is that it's sort of like it's like this fantasy of I don't know, like the worst thing happening and you're still safe and okay while it's happening. So then
Yeah.
that feels like really good,
Yeah.
and really liberating from those fears and those anxieties.
I totally relate to that. My origins are service submissive. Like I am a creature of service no matter
Mm.
what. Most often I am working in top space, but regardless of the medium, you know, whether I'm in person with someone, whether I'm doing a coaching call, whether I'm on this podcast, whether I'm doing a photography and or videography slutty session, you know, like I'm holding space for people most often in my life. And I know that when I used to get fucked in the ass by my first dominant, I just wanted to be called the filthiest names. And there was something so liberating about that, you know, being a cum dumpster, an anal whore, or whatever, you know, whatever we were like, I was like the filthiest. Like that's when I wanted to get called the dirtiest stuff when I was having this really intense experience. And not only did I feel like, ooh, yes, my fear of being called a whore is coming true. I mean, I did get called a whore by a girl when I was 15, and I was like, but I haven't even, what? Like this, wait, I could, oh, you know, and then it happened again with like Instagram and YouTube. So, um, you know, and so in those moments, I'm like, oh, not only am I like claiming those fears, I'm also like, I'm okay. I am desired. And also, like, that
Yeah.
stuff doesn't matter. And then for me, it starts to feel like a sweet pet name because it's coming from someone who I know really cares about me. So that's kind of like my internal experience
Yeah.
of that, just to
No,
bounce off of yours.
I feel totally the same way.
Before we get into like specifics, I would love to hear what are your current health and safety practices? I mean, you're in a monogamous relationship, but like
Mhm.
maybe give us a overview throughout the years, but like health and safety, I always love to just presence it in a conversation. So like what do you need to feel
Yeah,
comfy, to
absolutely.
safe? Like how do you handle that stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like so I've been mostly in monogamous relationships. So generally safety for me has looked like, getting tested at the start of a relationship. And then generally I was, like I would be monogamous with that person going forward. So in terms of STIs, we weren't too worried. Like an interesting, like big transition has been going from being like testosterone bodied to being estrogen bodied. That affects fertility, first of all. And it also has like, I mean, it affects, although it's like, I think that there's still definitely like trans women who are what's the term, who are like the giver in penetrative sex
Mhm.
using their own bodies. Like it can also affect your ability to do that. And like for me, I ceased to be interested in penetrative sex using my dick, like at a certain point. Like before I transitioned, even like I think, I had sort of been like, I'm not really into it, like let's do other stuff.
Ooh.
um and so that changes the safety conversation a lot, right? Like, which is in a great way,
Yeah.
because you're like, there's a lot that you don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
So like before that I would pretty routinely use condoms, and usually even with a partner. Most of my partners have usually also been, most of my partners have been women, mostly cis women, and they've like very often been on birth control in addition to that. Sometimes just for safety and sometimes for other reasons, because
Mhm.
there's lots of reasons to take birth control. Yeah, so the it changed a lot for me when I stopped having P&V sex, but like general like testing at the start of our relationship, and then like a level of protection appropriate to the risks that we were taking after that point.
I love that. Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's get into details.
Ah,
I would love to hear, like, how you learned about, however you want to parse it, love, sex, connection growing up, and I love to learn about your learnings by taking us through your meaningful sexual timeline, maybe starting with the first time you remember the concept of sex entering your awareness.
so I have this like vague memory of the first time it entered my awareness. I had a book when I was little that was, I think it was called Where Do Babies Come From? And it was these really funny illustrations of like kind of lumpy people. Honestly, it was like great. Like I loved these illustrations. I don't know. Like it just, they weren't like Hollywood people. It looks like, that's sort of like a very comfortable couple in their 40s who like, like don't work out because like I'm not worried about meeting people anymore, right? So like I don't care how I look, right? Like they just these like very comfy, cozy people having sex. And then it was like a whole thing where it's like, yeah, first they have sex and like here's the mechanics of that. And it's so funny. Like I was reading this and I was like 5 or 6 and I was like, you don't even have a sense of embarrassment about it. And like, I think that the book was very good at talking about that, like kind of without instilling it, without being like, this is shameful and you should keep it private. It's just kind of like, these parts are kind of private. Anyway, here's what happens. It's not even very interesting. Um, so like, it's funny because like, I feel like I read this book and I was kind of like, okay, now I know where babies come from. And it was like, like years later, I was like, oh yeah, what I'm learning about is like in that book. Like, oh, these like sexy things is that like kind of mechanical process that they were describing. That's interesting. Um, I had a sort of formative experience when I was, I don't know, like 10, 11, 12 in that range where my mom bought me this book that was called Boys and Sex. I remember that, but I can't really remember any other details about it at all. And it was like the thing I remember is that like I learned about the Kinsey reports from it. Like it referred back to like the Kinsey reports, right? So it was maybe not the most up to date, but it was scientifically grounded anyway. It was a really chill book. Like I don't know, like I don't know if it talked about queerness, and that's like something that I feel like I didn't learn a lot about when I was young, but it had a lot of really positive messages. Something really specific I remember it saying was sort of like, some people feel like they need to take a shower after sex, but like you don't need to. There's nothing like dirty about it, but you can if you want, right? It was just sort of, it was very destigmatizing. That's all.
Mm.
And it was, it talked a lot about like masturbation is normal, like all sorts of sexual activity is normal, oral sex is normal. Even I think where it did mention homosexuality, it was just kind of like, yep, some people are gay. Yep. Like enough, that was sort of all of the, it also did talk about STDs and pregnancy risk, but in like very neutral ways of like, these are things that can happen, so like be aware of them. And I don't, it's funny, like this book, I feel like this book had a profound impact on me, and like I don't know anything about it. Like I don't know who wrote it or how my
Yeah.
parents found it, but
Yeah.
had a very I think it was a very positive thing to be reading. Like when I was a teen, I masturbated a lot.
Mm.
Like that was a really important sexual outlet for me for a long time. And it's interesting because, like the way my body's changed on estrogen, I don't really masturbate much anymore.
Okay.
It's so worth it, but it is like a loss. I feel I'm like, that's true. I really liked masturbating. It's really nice.
Mm.
It's like, so like, it's, I don't know. It's just like, it's really fun. It's like very comfortable. Like, cause there's no pressure from anywhere. Like it's just simple. It's like you and your body and your imagination. And, it was, it was like a really important outlet for me for a long time, especially when I was in like, I had one particular relationship where we, at a certain point in the relationship, it was like we were very out of sync sexually, and we stopped having sex for a long time, essentially, more or less. And it was like, I don't know, it was something that felt very like familiar and comforting to be able to come back to, in that kind of situation. Yeah. And then I had a girlfriend in high school, like late in high school, who we were very good kids, like, so we were a little slow to get sexually active, but like eventually we started like, parking in empty parking lots on the weekends, and like making out a bunch and doing hand stuff, as the kids say.
I love hand stuff.
And then eventually we had intercourse. And that was, I don't know, this was like, I feel like adolescence was like my heyday for, this is like late adolescence, like I was probably 18. But it was like, that was the heyday for sexual intercourse for me, for like P&V sex.
Okay.
Because I was young. My gender feelings really, like, I think asserted themselves a lot more over time. Like in my 20s is when it started to feel more urgent. Like I think that there were sort of feelings there, but they were very like, it was kind of I don't know. It was like at a very slow boil. It was a very slow process for that to come front and center for me. So it felt like comfortable in my body, and like, I don't know. I was young. I had a partner who really enjoyed it.
Mm.
Um, and then yeah, like later on, I like I said, I stopped having like P&V sex in probably my late 20s. I was just like, my partner at the time, and it was something that like she didn't love it, for various reasons. And at a certain point, I was just kind of like, we were sort of talking through how it was kind of difficult for us, and I was just kind of like, what if we just don't do it? Like I don't feel like I need it.
Mm.
So if like you're trying to do it for me, like I think that's not really necessary. And that was definitely like a gender thing. It was a thing that, I don't know. It felt comfortable in a way that sort of surprised me.
Mm. Did you stop all erotic sexual contact, or was it just P&V? Like what was kind of
Just
the
P&V.
stopping?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay.
Great question. So like we consciously cut out P&V,
Got it.
um, which changed the, I don't know. It was definitely a positive step. Like that was a relationship that was always like, we didn't work together sexually very well for a whole host of reasons. But I think that was a really positive step for us, because we were following a script that we both felt like we had to follow,
Yes.
and just like cutting out this thing that didn't really work for her, and actually wasn't doing that much for me either, like took a lot of pressure off and allowed us to focus on things that we liked more. So it was, yeah, great move. Recommend it.
Yeah.
And then, so it was a few years after that, probably, that I started transitioning. So my partner, when I started to transition, it was very hard for her when I started to transition. Like she took a long time to like accept it, and it was, it was painful for her, which I fully understand, right? Like I get it. Like it's tough when you're with somebody and you have a certain image of them that complements like what it is that you want and the way you think of yourself, and then they change in a very dramatic way, right? Like totally get that it's hard. She really came through for me in a lot of ways. Like she was very supportive. She like, would like help me buy clothes, like teach me about cosmetics, like, she was really supportive. But for whatever reason, like we did not work sexually at all after I transitioned. It was a kind of a bed death situation.
Yeah.
When we broke up, which took a few years after that, after I transitioned, I mean, not after the bed death. When we broke up, I was like, in some ways, the first time I felt like I was having sex as a woman, and it was great. It was also, I don't know, it was great. Not that there weren't ups and downs, but like it was. It's hard to describe the ways it's different. Like, and I don't like, I haven't, this is the kind of space where you share these things. Like
Mhm.
I'm not interested in having bottom surgery. So I still have, I have a penis, and like, so mechanically sex doesn't change that much, but it also does. Like I don't know, like hormones change the way things work a fair amount in a way that is like, I think is great, right? Like it's a lot more sort of, I feel like I have a clit a lot of the time,
Yeah.
which is awesome. And I had sex that was like stressful for various reasons. Like I broke this, like I really jerked around this poor person, like, but without meaning to, but I just like, I did my thing where I was like, like we went on 3 dates, and like I think they were kind of like, I'm so excited for this to turn into a really serious relationship. And I was like, nope, bye. I now have to cut off all contact with you because I'm terrified.
Ooh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it was, I was probably not really ready to be dating. It was probably a little too soon. But it was, it was like a really tender, loving sexual experience. And I don't know, it was just like, I think that was my first time with somebody who was like, I might say culturally a lesbian, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
had sex with a lot of other lesbians, and I don't know, it helped me like break patterns. Like it helped me sort of like understand, like, okay, like there are other scripts, like, and there's so many scripts that you can pull from that, like it's kind of like there isn't a script.
Yeah.
Um, I think, gosh, that's something I think about a lot, like on this side of my experience, how much heterosex can fall into this script. I had this moment watching. I lived with my sister during the pandemic. She just like always liked to have old TV shows playing, and she was watching, like rewatching like the first season of Grey's Anatomy. And there's this like very simple by the numbers impotence plot where like one of the doctors can't get it up with his new partner. And I was genuinely just like remember watching this and being like, it's so weird. Like they're acting like they can't have sex because his
Yeah.
penis isn't getting hard.
Ugh.
Like there's so many things that they can do, including like to him. Like he could be having a great time, but
Yeah.
like they're locked into this very specific script. Yeah. That kind of brings you up to the present. And then like I had another partner who is like, I don't know, I feel like will always be kind of important to me because she's the only like trans woman. No, she's the only other trans woman I've had an encounter with. And that was special. That was really special. And I feel like, I don't know, it helped me value my body a lot. To, be in like really positive relationship to her body. And then I met my wife, and that's been great. The interesting thing about our relationship is that, sexually speaking, I mean, is that we were really nervous when we first met and we were talking, and we met online, and it was during the pandemic. So like we didn't meet for a while in person. We was for a long
Mm.
time. We were just talking, or like we would be on video calls. And we were nervous. We really liked each other. But she's actually ace, or she considers herself ace. And then, it's like, obviously, like ace is like a huge category with like a lot of room for what that means. And so I was kind of like, well, what does that mean for you? Like, what would that mean for us? And she was kind of like, I don't really know. Like, we're going to have to kind of figure it out between the two of us. And I think we both had a lot of, like we were both like anxious that it just wouldn't work out, right? Like that we, either that like, there would be like something I was looking for that she wouldn't sort of be able or be willing to provide, or that, like we wouldn't like sync up, but we just sync really nicely. And we do have like we have, yeah, I mean, we have really great sex. I'm sort of like I've always been really interested in kink, and kink's been a big part of my fantasy life. But this is the first time that I'm kind of living it, and I think that is something that is like works really well for her as an ace person, right? It's sort of this like very specific language where she's like, oh, like here's things that you like that I'm like very excited to do for you. And like they're very clear, like I can kind of learn the rules and like and do them. So yeah, that's been great. And
Oh,
that's a complete, I think that's a complete though brief sexual history, I suppose.
I love that. That is such a beautiful timeline overview. Thank you. And also, thank you for your wonderful language. Bed death is new to me. Cultural lesbian, the concept is not new, but like, love these phrases. I hear the writer in your speech, and I love that. And even just bringing up those scripts, it's so funny because as I hear you talk, I'm like, I always continue to learn things about myself, and I'm like, oh my God. It's like when I was younger, I didn't understand the, like, expectations and assumptions. I felt like I was always doing things wrong, and it literally wasn't until, like, last year, like, maybe year 1 to 2 years ago that I was like, "Oh, these scripts people talking about, that's that thing," and I didn't even realize until hearing you talk that I'm like, "Oh, that's why I was so confused in my early 20s." I felt like everyone wanted me to do or be something different, and I also had, like, very strongly eaten the message of, like, "Make your own life. You are special. Do whatever you want in the world. It's your oyster," and so I was like, "I'm being me. My mom said I'm a little different," and it's so funny because I just don't think I consciously had connected the dots between those scripts and my early experiences for so long. So,
Mm.
I love hearing about how it came up for you. So, what is sexy to you?
I mean, like, God, okay, like women are sexy. So I had pre-transition. I had this queer thing. I'm sure everybody has some variation, and yeah, of course it'll be different for everybody. But like, I don't know, some variation of like how things were just a little weird before I transition. But like, I had this ongoing experience of people like thinking I was gay, and like, and not in a negative way, because I was
Yeah.
like hanging out. This was like the 90s, right? So I was hanging out with like the gay straight alliance kids, and I remember this very sweet boy at a dance who was like wanted to like, was clearly kind of like pining for me, and I was just like,
Mhm.
I'm like have no interest in boys at all. I'm so sorry. Um but I also like at the same time I felt this very weird thing where like I was having this experience of people thinking I was gay, which for like, I don't know, fortunately like I had been like I guess I can thank my parents for this, and also just like the people around me. Like I didn't feel any sense of like shame about that, or like self-consciousness even. Because I didn't have any sense that it was bad to be a gay man at
Yeah.
all. But I was always just kind of like, no, no, it's like it's quite the opposite, really. Like
Yeah.
I just like really I felt the sense of like I felt an affinity with lesbianism, right? Which is like very weird for a straight man. Like there's like a joke that I feel like I heard a few times growing up where straight cis men would say like, oh, I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body, which like I to this day don't know why that's funny, right? Because And I think it's because I was just kind of like, isn't that just, aren't we just describing, like, I just, that string of words like really
Yes.
baffles me. Like to
Yes.
this day, like I have trouble. I'm just like, what a strange string of words. I just have trouble even putting into words why, but it was like, I guess I was, right? Like, and I don't think of myself that now, but at the time, like, I think it did make me scratch my head in this way where I was like, I'm kind of like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but I had this like this sort of like pride or I mean, I think that's a good way to put it. I had like a pride in the fact that I was attracted to women. I was like, women are so wonderful. It's so great that I'm attracted to them. Like it really was kind of like straight pride, just like how I was experiencing it. Not that I would ever have put it in those terms, or like I don't think I thought of it until I sort of fully understood what was going on.
Sure.
And then the fact that I was a woman sort of clicked for me when it also clicked for me that I was a lesbian. I needed to understand that I was both of those things before I could like move forward with my transition fully.
Mm.
A very important figure, a very important fictional character in my transition was Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who was Willow's girlfriend.
Okay.
And like, I just like completely fixated on her as a 16-year-old boy. I was just like, this character is like the best fictional character. Like, I want to do nothing but think about her. Like, I have pictures of her around. Just like typical like mega fan stuff. But like, it was, I just like the first moment where I sort of knew that there was something going on with my gender was like, I was in my late 20s and I'm like walking down the street thinking about like, I was just genuinely being like, the story of Willow and Tara's love really is the perfect expression of love. Like and then I was just like, I don't think most people do this. Like, I don't think most cis straight men are walking around thinking about a lesbian from a 10-year-old TV show.
Mm.
Is there maybe something's happening there? And yeah. So I read a few years ago, I read a book called Transgender History by Susan Stryker, who's a trans woman historian. It's a great book. It's very much about like 20th century trans activism, which she like says at the beginning. She's like, transgender history is a very big title, but this is actually like pretty specific. Like, we're not, and that doesn't mean there's no other history. It's just what this book is about. But she has some selections in that book from the diaries of a trans man named Lou Sullivan, and details from his diaries that made a huge impact on me was specifically that he was a gay trans man, right? Like, and that was an important part of that journey for him. And that just like really connected with and like for me in this specific way of that I was like, oh, that's part of it. Like, the fact that I'm a woman who loves women is an important part of my womanhood. And like, it's something that really like, it's a moment that really clicked for me. So like, girls just drive me wild. They're so pretty. They're like, they're gorgeous. They're so sexy. Just, yeah,
Yes.
that's my number one thing. That's my number one
Oh,
answer.
hard agree. Okay. Off the top of your head, tell us some physical sensations and or sexy scenarios you love.
I love edging. I love, and I don't even know how to talk about that. Like, I love the experience lasting a long time. I love, I really like, I love all kinds of submission. Like, I really, it can make me feel so safe and relaxed. Like, I
Mm.
think that those are the two keywords, like just really like every muscle in my body being relaxed. My I've always had like fantasies of being hypnotized, and my wife has like done that with me, and it's just like is so like it's it's like for me it's this like pathway to just like this is very deep sense of relaxation, um and safety, the sort of like physical relaxation and the sense of being like very safe and not having to do anything. And when I say safe, like I think part of it is like the sense that there's nothing I can do wrong, like there's no action I could take that would just be like not what my partner was looking for, or like, like not something that's sexy to them.
Mm.
Like just being in that complete state of relaxation also makes anything physical like a lot more vivid. I just like love vibrators. This is like going back to scripts,
Yeah.
like I'm just kind of like, I think that straight men should try vibrators on their
Yeah.
penises. Like, I
Yeah.
think you'd like it,
Oh,
boys. Like,
oftentimes they do. They're like, I can't, and I'm like, hang on,
yeah, it's just they're great. Like, they're really nice.
Yeah.
People should try them. I really like anal penetration, but it's
Mhm.
like it's sort of like an event for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like let's fucking do it. I'm in the
Yeah.
mood. I'm like feeling good, feeling relaxed, feeling ready for it. But like it really works for me when it works.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's both like it's just great physically. If you're like relaxing going into it, and it's like oof, it's very, I think it hits both like gender and submission buttons.
Mhm.
It's like very like being penetrated is like there's something like whatever. Like this is all very psychosexual stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's not that like being penetrated is innately a part of womanhood or something, but it is just there's something about that is like okay, like I'm accessing something that is like something that when I was like as I was like developing sexually is something that I didn't think I could have, but that maybe I kind of really wanted.
Yeah.
So it's great. And yeah, and it's also like very like I think it hits the submission button too, right? Because you're just like it's this very overwhelming physical thing that puts your partner very much in control of what's happening, and it feels great. Yeah, those are my top physical sensations.
I love
And top scenarios. Like I think the one other thing I would say is like dirty talk.
that. Okay.
Um it's great. Like I mentioned before about like being called slurs. Like I also just like just being called like a stupid slut.
Mhm.
Like bring it on, like all day, every day in the bedroom. And like I mean we talked about this a little before, right? Like how there's sort of this sense of like safety and liberation because it's like you're being called the bad words and like nothing bad is happening. So you're just kind of like, great, like I'm just existing in this space. And like some of the weapons that I'm like afraid of are out, like not being used and not hurting me. And it's great.
Mm. I love that. But speaking of hurting you, could you just talk about impact play a little bit? Like, do you have toys, implements,
Sure.
hands? Like, are you into pain or kind of like what do you like to experience?
We keep it like what we do is pretty light. Like
Mhm.
it's mostly spanking, or
Oof.
like just with hands.
Yeah, I
Um
love that.
and yeah, gosh, like it's part of submission for sure, right? It's like for me, I mean, that it's like it's a way of somebody exercising, demonstrating power over you
Mm.
in a way that can be very like very sexy when you're already in this safe area. I also just like I don't know. I find it really intense, especially if other stuff is going on. Like if my clit is being stimulated and like my ass is being spanked, it's just like I don't know, it's like a times two multiplier.
Yes.
um
Same.
Probably the most intense thing that I think that my wife is like a little like we've done before, and she's like a little, her thing is always like she definitely enjoys it, and she's also always like I'm afraid I'll hurt you, which is one reason we've like we like stick to hands, like it's not super intense, but like sometimes I've asked her to slap me in the face,
Mm.
and like again, like not for me, not for every day, but like if I'm like fully relaxed, it feels like for like just like the sensation
Yeah.
is like powerful in the same way as being like slapped on the ass. But
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's the same thing again, right? Of like I think it makes me feel very powerless, but then like in a way that it's like and nothing bad is happening.
Yeah.
So everything's okay. Like, even if you have no power, nothing bad happens. So like you can really just fully relax and everything will be okay.
I love that. I also feel like, because I'm into face slapping, especially if I'm being edged and I'm like about to come, and then it's like not yet, and then I'm like, whoa, and I
Oh, that's
and I feel it's so
good.
hot, and I feel from the right person, obviously negotiated, obviously
Of
experience,
course,
safety,
yeah.
etc. And then I feel so powerful because I'm like, my orgasm is getting drawn out, like the whole
Yeah.
experience feels bigger, and I see that I can withstand, something that is supposed to be the most demeaning, terrible thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
haha, joke's on you, sucker. I love it.
And you
So
actually feel like treasured and loved, like while it's
yes,
happening, right? Like
yes,
it's just like
yeah,
so
it's
like
for me.
I know that there are people for whom it's just like not a thing, but for me it's just like so, oh, it just feels so right.
Yeah.
It feels
Oh
great.
my God. We're going to have you back to do a deep dive on like kink, maybe mixed with sci-fi. Not sure. But
Oh my gosh, sure.
in the meantime, I'd love to hear what, if anything, is on your bucket list. It could be a sexy bucket list, but it doesn't have to be, but just your life adventure bucket list going forward. Like how do you hope to woo yourself as you progress in this
Hmm.
existence?
In terms of generally being wooed, like I'm thinking, like, so I'm 39, right? Which is it's 1 year before 40. So it is
Mhm.
like sort of it's kind of a transitional moment, right? Like I'm getting older. Like I feel a lot more settled than I did like 5 years ago, where it's like I'm with a partner I plan to stay with for a very, very long time. And like the shape of my life is becoming more and more clear, or, at least for like the next 10, 20 years. So I think a lot of what I'm focusing on right now is I want to build something that will be sustaining for that time. And it's interesting because like my intimate relationship is actually not the main focus of that, right? Because that feels like the thing it's gotten really solid, and now I can build on it, like artistically and socially. Like I'm still, I've been in Montreal a few years now, but I still, like have a lot of way to go, like making friends and meeting people. So that's something that's really important to me, like spiritually as well. That feels like something that I kind of have energy to think about more. Um, Honestly, like maybe the biggest thing is just professionally, because I work in technology. It's a tough time to be working in technology in late 2024. Like it's,
Yeah.
there's layoffs. I'm currently unemployed, not because I was laid off, but because my last job was absolutely intolerable and it was making
Mm,
me miserable.
good for you.
And my Thank you. Yeah. I'm very lucky that my partner, my wife was like, just leave. Like I can support us for a while you look for a job. So like, gosh, and like, our world's gonna have a lot of challenges coming up. I want to build something kind of stable. I want to feel stable so that to meet those challenges,
Mm.
like as they impact me, and as like they'll require coordinated action from everybody over time. In terms of like sex and romance, I think that like one thing I'm interested in is I think that we're monogamous. Like we don't I feel like both of us are kind of like haven't fully closed the door on whether we'll revisit that someday, which would be really interesting. It's not necessarily something I'm like, I feel very like things are great, right? So it's not like something needs to change, but that would be a fun adventure to have at some point.
Mm.
And I have a lot fewer items here because I feel like I've gotten to do a lot of them in the last few years, which is really
Amazing.
great. Something we haven't done that I'm excited to try is her fucking me with a strap on. Like
Oh,
haven't done it. It would be really
yes.
great.
Oh, yes. Oh, I want to hear about it when you do it because
I would love
I've
to.
just gotten
Gosh,
into straps. Yeah.
they're yeah, I'm excited for it. The one thing actually is like we talked at the very beginning about like my wife can find it hard to receive affection. That holds true in bed, and that is actually really tough for me.
Mm.
Like we have found something that works really well for us, but like it is like like it's like it's like our main joke about our sex lives is just that yeah, I know you want to eat me out, but like we're gonna like only at special occasions.
Yeah.
I was saying before, like girls are very sexy and pretty. Like
Mm.
I love doing things to girls that make them feel good. So like that is, I think that's like that's an area of evolution, right? Like, and I think that like her preferences are like pretty set. Like we're also like testing where those limits are, and I'm thinking about ways to still feel like really great and present, like while that's true.
Mm.
Those are some of my ambitions, some of the dreams
I
and hopes of
love
what's
that.
next.
And I look forward to seeing what and how it unfolds. It all unfolds. Okay, so to wrap up, how do you think that we can co-create a more connected, loving, woo-filled world? And part two of that question is, how do you like to spread ripples of love?
Hmm. So okay, this is like a proposed solution, and it's really obvious, but something that I think about a lot as a trans woman, meaning like having lived a good part of my life as a man, is just like it's just so rough for men right now. Like, which feels weird to say because it's like there's toxic masculinity and patriarchy are out of control, but like I think that so many of those things do like come back to this deep sense of suffering
Yeah, I agree.
and unhappiness, right? And like there's not like there's no prescription for that. So there's this person that I like who I knew in college who I think of as my shadow self in this specific way. And I say this what I say flippantly is that like you either like a certain type of guy either transitions or becomes an incel, right? Like and I don't mean incel like if you're not having sex and you want to, like that's a tough situation, and like there's nothing shameful about that, and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's okay. But like you sort of like descend into this sort of there's this specific guy who some of my friends actually like he dated, you could say, one of my friends. Like really they just hooked up once or twice, and he was really creepy about it. Like
mm,
afterwards, he was really hung up on her for a long time and like pushed her boundaries a lot. And I get updates on him because I know his sister as well, and like just hasn't gotten better over time.
damn.
And I feel like at the time, like back in our, when we were both 22, I sort of had this feeling of like we're both people who have this like there's something complicated about our relationship to women and femininity that we're both trying to figure out. And I feel like I figured it out. And I
Mm,
feel like he really didn't.
mm,
And kind of like went the wrong direction. So anyway, this is all just to say that like I don't have a solution, but I think that one of the challenges we have to face is like men who are like lonely and hurting, and then that like expresses itself in these completely abhorrent displays of like worst case scenario like violence or sexual
yeah.
violence or like just sort of misogyny and toxic masculinity. And so that's something that like I don't have like a yeah like you can be good to the people in your life, and that's ultimately like all you can really do, and you have to do that while watching out for yourself and taking care of yourself. So which makes it tougher. And then in terms of like me spreading joy in the world, ripples of love, I think that you can do so much just by, I think like very small acts of kindness are like go a very long way. The best thing that can possibly happen to you at a party where you don't know a lot of people is that you meet a grad student. Because if you meet a grad student, what you say is, "What are you studying?" And then whatever they say, you say, think of the first question that comes to mind, right? I talked to somebody once at a party for like an hour who was studying the attitude toward farmers toward adopting organic organic farming practices. Like that
literally
was her
on
area.
a farm right now where I was like, Dad, we need to transition. Dad. And it took a minute, but lo and behold, we're in the process of certification now. And now we have little signs that are organic.
That's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, and I mean, the thing is, like, all of these things are incredible. Like,
Yeah.
every topic, if somebody's studying it, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, right? So
Yeah.
I just like, I was like, I forget what the first question, like, you just asked the first question that comes to
Curiosity.
mind,
Yeah.
right? So I was just
or
like,
my default question is like, ooh, I would like to know more about that. What are you learning right now that's interesting to you?
absolutely, right? Or like, you can always go for the like the deep cut if you get into trouble, is like, wow, that sounds really challenging.
Yeah.
Because like, everybody has challenges in their
Yes.
studies or their work, and they can talk about those, right?
So true. So true.
So like, anyway, like, my point in bringing this up is just that, like, just being curious and showing a genuine
Yeah.
interest in and sorry, let me phrase that carefully, because it's not about showing a genuine interest, it's being genuinely interested, right?
Yes.
Which doesn't mean like I don't remember everything I learned in that conversation,
That's
but
okay.
it was still very interesting, a very interesting conversation. You know, like, I did learn things, and what they were doing was really cool. So I think at like a day-to-day level, that's something that I feel like has taken me very far, is just trying to be curious about the people around me, and what's going on with them, and helping them, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, right? Like, helping them feel like a little special and chosen, right? Just be like, my job at my job today is like to learn about you.
Yes.
And then like that person is gonna like that, and then they're gonna like you. So it's actually very self-serving if you think about it.
And it's such a fun way to live like that. This podcast has helped me be braver to share my truly genuine curiosity that overwhelms people. And so now wherever I go, I'm learning cool stuff and I'm getting cool, nice connections with people who then become curious about me, you know, or we go our separate ways and we've just had a nice exchange. And then I feel more hopeful about this world. And
Yeah,
I'm
agreed completely. Yeah.
so deeply grateful for all of your insights here and your shares and your thoughtfulness. And you're spreading ripples of love by sharing your story here. So thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing your wisdom on woo. Thank you for sharing your sex stories.
My pleasure. It was really great to be here. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Lovely woo humans, that is our show. Remember to follow your hearts and follow your parts and follow me in family-friendly internet places at Lunar Woohoo, or if you're in naughty internet places, at Lunar Secrets. Visit howtowoo.fyi for links to everything. You can support our awesome show on Patreon for early ad-free episodes. You can worship me virtually on OnlyFans or Sextpanther, or we can work together in person in a number of excellent creative capacities. You can also ask a question, share a story, or apply to be a guest at howtowoo.fyi if you want to be on the show. And tell a friend to help us grow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and let me know how you're spreading ripples of love.